BIM was sold incorrectly to owners. The value prop of BIM is the starting spot of foundational data for your building. It gives you a single starting spot that then can load into all these operationals and then grow, versus BIM was always sold as a 3D tool and said, hey, owner, you should do it because it's in 3D. That's so cool. No, actually, it's a very unique opportunity to build a database from design and construction.
On this week's show, the Voyage to Value with Jacob Dalbora from VIATechnik. We're back. That's right. Y'all recognize everybody who's sitting down with me today. But if you haven't learned, we're all here doing things out in the industry and then coming back to the ConTech Crew and talking about it. And so we're boomeranging Jacob out of the host seat and into the hot seat. So we'll get to him in a minute. Nathan Wood sitting down with me again. You ready to put our homie on the hot seat for the day?
I checked the show notes 5 minutes before just to make sure I wasn't the guest. I was wondering for a second who was the guest. I was like, wait a minute here. So yeah, I was relieved to find out that I wasn't. So yeah, excited to grill our friend Jacob.
So
here
Jacob,
and, find out what's
does it
going
feel
on.
any different sitting in what will be the interviewee position versus the interviewer?
The pressure is immense here. I mean, I've been a guest one other time, and that was like welcoming. You guys were like, oh, this is great. We're so glad you're here. Thank you. Now it's like, all right, prove your point.
I haven't felt this kind of pressure since James Benham.
So, hey, you guys know this. Follow us on the social medias. Follow us at YouTube, youtube.com/at the ConTech Crew. And if you haven't been signed up for the newsletter, I know it was broken on the website. And thank you to the folks for telling me. I got it fixed. So get yourselves signed up because there was some interesting announcements this week. Well, maybe this is a couple of weeks ago. We'll have a show coming up on it, but the crew is on the move. If you want to learn more, well, you're going to have to subscribe to find out. All right, crew, it's back. The next evolution of Bluebeam's legendary user conference, XCon, is here. It's called Unbound, and it's coming to DC this fall, September 30th to October 2nd. You know the vibe. Expert insights from industry leaders, cutting-edge construction tech, Bluebeam training and certification, and unparalleled networking with your global peers. Unbound takes that legacy to the next level with new AI-powered workflows, global AEC connections. But don't worry, they kept the free Bluebeam certifications. Keynotes from my hero, Duncan Wardle, former head of innovation and creativity at Disney, and Apple's legendary co-founder, Steve Wozniak. Use our exclusive code, UNBOUNDTHECREW, for a discount, and join us as Bluebeam evolves and leads the digital construction movement. Register now at unbound.bluebeam.com, and we'll see you there. Use code UNBOUNDTHECREW.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't know VIATechnik, we're a VDC BIM consulting firm. Danielle Dibuncio, Anton Dibuncio both started this back in 2012. And basically since then, we have grown to over 300 employees. So we started as the VDC people for, design and construction, really GCs, really moved into trades, helping trades get better. And then about 5 years ago, it was this turn to owners and this idea of what can we do for the owner side of all the industry? I think there's always been that talk, right? Everybody's always had this idea of like, oh, this could be used on the owner side. It should be used. And we'll get into it. But what doesn't happen is the true idea or the thought process of how it actually is used and if that value is there. So my journey went from a couple other firms, business units, doing stuff, always focused on owners, but came to VIATechnik to really lead this, owner services side. So now for, last 3 years, I've been here leading owner services, really pushing it, talking about it in the industry. If you haven't heard me talk about digital twin or facility management, you're probably not listening well. So I'm here to talk about it more.
If you go all the way back to the beginning of VIATechnik, and I may have said this on the other show, my introduction to a lot of what was BIM was MCAA technology. And it was Danielle DiBuncio sitting up there and running through it at an identifiable and understandable level as they were bringing it from, the design and construction to the trades, and really like connecting the dots since they had upstream experience. That was what that room wasn't experiencing. And for me, it was a connection point I needed. So, I always have this, like, how many talks have we been in over the years? And how many of them can you really remember? And I can vividly remember that one where we were and her on stage, and like, we were like, we got to run off and record. I'm like, no, I don't want to leave this. I want to listen. I'm learning. So I think what VIATechnik has built and built thoughtfully, Danielle's been very good about that over the years, is awesome. So it's great to see all of this under one roof, I think provides a value. And I'm wondering, as you came in to fill out that value prop, how that was looking at, kind of these other business units that you have, but then realizing they're all connected.
And it's interesting. And I actually really appreciate the way you talked about that presentation, because we actually really do look at everything as a journey. So really we talk about it as a digital transformation journey, but we always talk about it as we're on that journey with our clients. So it doesn't matter if you're a GC, you're a trade, or you're an architect, engineer, or owner. We're on that journey with you. So being able to simplify, being able to talk to it as points that people understand and grasp and understand the value is big, right? We just don't want to talk over everybody and they say, well, we don't need that. We're fine the way we are. We want to be on that journey with them and really get them there. So as we've built the idea of BIM and VDC and really supported the industry, we've known and seen owners try and use the value of BIM and VDC, but never really successfully. I think there's been several case studies of the delivery of Revit models to owners or being able to use it during the project closeout process. Even Navisworks was like, hey, we can put a hyperlink into the properties and they can use Navisworks for the next 12 years. None of that was really thought out well. And it ended up being a turn to, fix it in the industry, because owners were like, hey, can you do the standards for us? And it's like, well, what, instead of just downloading Penn State, what do you want the standards to do for you? And we started hearing more and more about these problems and what they were trying to do, but really just saying, hey, here's a Revit file was not the answer. It was not the way they could do it.
Jump in real quick. But so those know, he wasn't talking about, downloading Penn State's Revit model. But if you guys don't know, for those that don't, Penn State authored the BIM standards. So it is a classic, like it's used in this process. So just so people knew. Nathan, go ahead. I'm the one that has to, make sure us IT people are informed on what the heck you guys are talking about.
Well, and to further clarify, it's the Penn State BIM Execution Guide, which again, once filled out, can become a standard or an attachment to a contract on a project. But it's just a bunch of questions that they have to go through and answer. And it's how do you answer those questions that becomes this whole challenge. But I guess, Jacob, you brought a lot there, and Danielle and I go way back. I think VIATechnik is one of a few companies that have really perfected that services model of how do you take advantage of both local talent, but also that international kind of working 24-hour cycle efficiency to really perfect that. And I think it's interesting to make that move into the product world. Like, is this the first time VIATechnik has made that move into developing a product, or because I know that's always a tough thing to do. Others have done it before and have backed away from it. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's not our first, but in the last 3 years, we've created 2 products. We've had custom software development for probably 6 or 7 years. We then moved into a lessons learned platform called Precogs, which was a very internal tool. And then we said, hey, maybe the industry wants this too. And that's still available. It's still there. We have quite a few customers on it, but it's not one of our big pushes. It's just us serving the industry. Voyager, which is our digital twin solution, which we're going to talk about here, is our literal, I think, first go to market. Huge boom. This can be sold as a standalone, SaaS, or it can be sold with services. It can be sold as a deliverable out of our services. So it's our first product. And I will say it's really interesting to bring product people in and then have all these services people sitting there like, no, this is how we did it all the time. And it's like, well, stop doing it that way. But it's good. It's another learning moment for it. But there's also like we were deploying these services for so many years to solve a problem. And now we're trying to add a product into it. So it's a different way of thinking because you don't continually want that product. Well, I guess, yeah, we're gonna keep going.
Well, but we were having this debate off recording about standards and what even is a definition of standards. And I think right there, what you were just describing of products saying no services, you can't just do it X, Y, and Z way. It needs to be this certain way for this system to work. That is a standard, right?
Yep.
And it's like, what are those gotchas? Those like, oh man, until everybody does these certain things a certain way, we're never going to get those measurable pieces of data that this industry needs. And so it is a little bit of like, is the cart leading the horse? Is it a chicken or the egg when it comes to data and AI? Because I don't think we have the right measurement set up. And then two, we're also working with crap data. So it's like, how should we be measured? And then how do you create systems and standards to funnel it that way? I mean, that's what you had the beauty of having both services and a product is that you have a little bit more control over that, I guess, right?
This is what I've seen over the years. The past 10 years I've been in this field, really partnering with a lot of software companies, really test driving, really pushing it. And what I've seen is the BIM groups that are like, hey, we can build a tool that's really cool and that could help with the owners is not serving the owners correctly because they didn't know product. They knew services. But then the product side, so you're talking about your FM management tools, your operating system tools for building operations. We're like, oh, it would be really great to put a BIM component into our tool. And they really didn't think it through. And they basically could open like a architectural model with no MEP in it, and it wouldn't load for about 20 minutes. And they realized, oh crap, we don't get BIM. And so there was this like miss in the market. The value was like shown and understood, but not really defined on how to get there. And I think that's where we took both sides of the coin and said, hey, we're going to approach this. We understand BIM, we understand products, but we also understand that we've been working with owners long enough. What are they looking for?
That's the value in creating the product. And it's going to be the value in telling the story. And so I would urge, the team at VIATechnik to document the change and the change management and the philosophical changes, because I think you're going to enlighten the industry a little bit, because we rarely have those groups under one roof working together, but then also having to go through a fundamental business model shift, right? We've said this for a long time in architecture. It's why generative design, things like test fit, etc., are so disruptive to it. It's not their goal to be disruptive to the industry. It was their goal to advance the industry. But what they unintentionally did was disrupt the business model, right? They were billable hour people that saw things as billable hours. Service people see things as billable hours, and you're changing that for your own team. And that's a powerful and uncomfortable change, right? Because if I'm a BIM and VDC facilities management, like if I'm managing that and all of a sudden you're telling me there's a product, are you replacing me? Like, this is an interesting shift that we see in a lot of places. That was, to me, the value of like diving into this discussion of, what did you learn as the group that knew the problems, and what were some of the hurdles you had to get over to get your team to be like, no, we should do this.
And to talk to that point too is, that idea and what you just mentioned exposes like the mindset of somebody, right? If they see that opportunity come in, it's a disruption to their company, and they look at it and say, no, I don't want it because I'm not able to keep my business model the way it is, versus saying, holy crap, that could change our business model for the better. I need to learn how to adopt that. And I think that's the whole discussion of AI, right? Right now, it's like, it's going to change your business model. It's going to change what you're doing. Are you willing to adopt it and actually grow as a business, or are you willing to ignore it and in 10 years you're going to be left behind? Very similar to a lot of construction that we've seen over construction technology we've seen over the last 10 years too.
So I'm going to push back a little bit here, because I was actually just on a call with an owners group yesterday. Hopefully we'll be presenting at their conference this fall. But we were talking about, and he was one of many that didn't necessarily have an affinity towards using a BIM tool for facilities management. And my argument to him was, well, there's a difference between BIM viewed and BIM sourced. It just like Google Maps, anything else. Like, you got different 2D and 3D and other views that you can be in that's easiest for you. But at the end of the day, the information is all relational. It's all sourced from the same model, right? Which is really a computer model, not necessarily a 3-dimensional model. So I think people get a lot of times hung up on the 3D aspect when we talk about BIM and digital twin and all these things. But really what we're talking about is a relational mapping of all this information, so that regardless of where and how you're viewing it, that you could drill into even more information from where it was sourced, because it was all connected together through some mathematical computer model.
This is where we've approached it differently. This is my whole, I literally went to the facility side and started like sitting with them, talking with them, learning about what they did. And what I realized was all the ideas in construction and the technology being built in construction was just being pushed onto facility managers. They were having to just take it and they didn't know what to do with it. So they ended up with NIBS files or Revit files, and they were told, this is how you go look at your building. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't help them in any way. I literally saw a healthcare system send their full facilities group for 2 weeks of Revit training, and they never opened Revit again afterwards. Like, there's just certain things. So it's a matter of, what does the facility side need? And it needs to be pulled in. So you look at it from also a process standpoint of how they do their job. Can we enhance their process instead of replacing their process? Because what we're currently doing with digital twins and the push for the past 5 years has been, hey, do this instead. Like, you should open this 3D tool instead, and then you can find what you're looking for. What we've done with Voyager is, hey, what you have done for the past 20 years is gone to an asset management list and said, I need to find this piece of equipment. Well, you still have that capability. That's actually the first thing you can still do. This is what you want. But once you get there, there's a button that says view in 3D. Boom. Now you jump to your 3D model. You're not lost. You're not actually confused. You're not scared about it because you don't actually do anything afterwards, but you're able to view it in 3D. So now we're enhancing their process versus just saying, hey, we're going to replace it.
Yeah, that came directly from your experience sitting with them and understanding how they work. And that's the value of perspective. And it's the big miss in software. Somebody invented a 3D tool and it's a hammer looking for a nail and everybody's a nail. And it's like, no, you don't understand. I just got off the phone with somebody talking about this, that the industry has been so obsessed with these solutions that we have to be obsessed with problems, and we have to be obsessed with not being hung up on the solution in our own heads and designing and implementing things that work. And, someday you'll change this to a Voyager data twin because you're accessing the data through their systems, making it available, and then you're enhancing it. And that enhancement's the trigger, right?
So there
and
you
by
go.
the way, if you want to get somebody to do something new, it can't be wholeheartedly new from the beginning. It's scary and it's ugly. And we all have businesses to run. So you're getting in the way of my business. If I'm in a facilities management and I have something that has to be done, I have a hospital, I have filters that need to be changed because we're getting negatively impacted in our operating rooms. I don't have freaking time to go through your silly process. However, if I go through my current process and I get the filter I want, and then I go, see in 3D, oh, wow, okay, I can do that faster. Go. And you know what? The first time I click it, if I go, bleh, I'm going to vomit. That's okay. I got what I needed. I can run out and do what I was going to do. And then the next time, and then eventually it'll become second nature, or the other person you're working with is like, oh, click the model button and I found that. This is, Jacob, I love the solution to a problem and then just guiding them to those next steps.
But even in that situation, I want to challenge Jacob, because I know you probably have a good answer for this of what does keep the facility manager up at night. Because I don't think like a little bit more of an efficient way of doing that is necessarily what keeps him up at night. But I bet there is something that, you know, is information that the tool provides or whatever. I mean, yeah, like what's kind of been the best storyline, or what have you found as that problem statement or value prop?
There's a few there. One I'll go to, and it relates to the data twin that Jeff just mentioned, is, and this has been the bane of my existence right now, is the term single source of truth, because that's not real. It's not going to exist. There is not going to be a single source of truth. But what keeps them up at night is not being able to react in the correct way. And by that, I mean is finding the correct information when they need it. They have to go through several different sources to find data on maybe the same piece of equipment. And so now, instead of what people wanted was a single source of truth and wanted people to actually load everything to one spot, and then other systems really exist as interoperability. What we want to do is we want to make these facility management programs and platforms interoperable so that they're sharing information. We then can also identify which ones are the authoritative source of information for that piece of equipment. Piece of equipment might have 90 attributes, might have 6, but maybe 2 of those attributes come from one source, 2 of them come from a different source. What we're doing with Voyager and what we're doing with digital twins is acting as a centralized access point to all that data. So now you're not worried about, I do have to open this program, then I have to open this program, and then I still can't find it. We're kind of compiling. It's just interoperability. It's not actually living in a single source, but we're actually allowed to access it from a single point.
Right? The single source of truth is false, right? My truth is my reality, my perception. So you can never tell me that there's a single source of truth, because it doesn't exist. And you hit on one of the things I am so passionate about right now for the industry, for technology. Stop trying to win. You're not going to win. No one ring to rule them all, and start working together. Right? Because what you have built is what I refer to as a data consumer, right? You are a data consumer. You're compiling, you're making it accessible. What everyone should realize about Voyager, and there's lots of other examples of these types of tools, but it is super powerful that data consumers actually drive data creators to be utilized more. So if I open up my interoperability for whatever tool I have to Voyager, the people using it on the other end see more value, and that drives more usage because my customer is getting value out of it. And we can stop pointing fingers. And what I loved was, you know, I've heard electricals, I've heard mechanicals and others say, yeah, I handed it over to them on a USB drive now, and they just put it in the drawer and it's gone. It's like, that's because it's not being consumed. So, I mean, you've hit on some of the most powerful ways to really help the ecosystem connect.
The last point that we thought about, and this is going back to the process, the enhancement of their current workflow, is not everybody has the same workflow, and you can't force everybody to have the same workflow. But if we have a tool and there is a handful of different ways to find information in that tool, whether you're going through documents, whether you're going through reality capture, whether you want to go through a 3D model, whether you want to go, but you're finding the same information no matter what path you take. And that way you're actually going the most comfortable, and, you know, I can find it. I know what I need to get. And then you learn from different ways on top of it, and you have access to all those other modules. So we've built Voyager as this modularized piece, and all these different things are connected, and it's connected all the way through the assets based on those. So those assets then are also connected to your other systems. So we are pulling performance from your BMS and we are pulling asset management from your CMMS. And that's the interoperability coming back to it.
The problem is, what is this? Like something is broken. I'm going out in the field and I need to figure out what this thing is. And there could be multiple different avenues that they're going to go down to identify what that thing is. Maybe there's a clearly identified label that they can go off of, but maybe there's not. And so, yeah, there's all different kinds of ways where BIM, reality capture, other ways with your camera on your phone to identify what that thing is, or geolocate yourself within a building. So that's where, again, you don't have to be using BIM, but yet without BIM, you couldn't have done that, right? And that's that nuance. I don't think in any of these cases necessarily they would want to be in even like some sort of a, whatever that is, virtual reality, where like you're moving the camera around and it's showing you an x-ray of what's behind there. Like there's so few cases where that makes sense, but they exist. So they're cool. But it really, the power is the fact that it was sourced from BIM. And that is what Voyager gives you, right? Like, because everything's coming from BIM and at some point has to be stored somewhere, and you're becoming, at least for the FM side of it, their single source, hopefully, of truth.
BIM was sold incorrectly to owners. The value prop of BIM is the starting spot of foundational data for your building. Gives you a single starting spot that then can load into all these operationals and then grow, versus BIM was always sold as a 3D tool and said, hey, owner, you should do it because it's in 3D. That's so cool. No, actually, it's a very unique opportunity to build a database from design and construction that then can power operations.
I want to go into that a little bit more because we've got a lot of folks listening that aren't on the FM side, and I'll be honest, don't necessarily care. Why is this important, and this ability for this stuff to land in Voyager? How is this going to help trades, design and construction? How does this help the upward teams? What's in it for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, as we're looking at this, we're now capturing also information from operations, and we're now starting to understand how a building performs. And it's not in a BMS system that we don't understand how to read or how to get information out of. It's actually coming back into the BIM, and we can reuse it during design construction. So that whole circle chart of life cycle, it actually can be used. And I see a little bit of a downfall for some engineers in this, because what happens if your design is now starting to be proved incorrect because we have this full life cycle of how it performed, and now we're looking at, Nathan, you mentioned it before, standard of care. Like, did you do it correctly? The good thing is, though, it's going to be 30 years before they come back and say, well, you didn't design the first building correct. Why is this working?
And that's where I think you can double down on, because the first example of being able to find the information is a lagging indicator, because the issue happened. You didn't predict that issue happening. This whole being able to feed BMS data and feed the operations data in is where you can start to get to those leading indicators. That's more proactive, where you can actually know that thing's going to blow before it actually does. So you're serving both purposes, right?
And that's the biggest thing. So the value that it's going to have for facility managers is being able to understand how your building is performing and catching things before it goes down. Right now, you're looking at lagging indicators. If a piece of equipment goes down, you look for the trend that happens before it, and then you try and find that trend moving forward. That's a manual process. But the thing is, though, is data analyzation through AI is going to become that indicator. And what's really cool is your manufacturers, Train, Carrier, they're going to actually have that data on them, because they're going to be collecting this across all their implementations, not just one client or one building. So all of a sudden, if it's in the Southwest of the United States and they have 2 units go down, they could possibly even look at the clients in the Southwest and say, hey, if you see this vibration pattern and it raises above this temperature, you're going to want to go change the filter before it falls apart.
See, you're nailing on something that I was going to challenge, and you brought in the AI. I was going to challenge. It's not going to take 30 years. I think it's going to get faster and faster and faster, and we're going to get predictive. That's the beauty of what AI can do for us is it can find patterns, it can consume large amounts of data, and it can create some of this for us. My challenge to the trades, the engineers, the architects that you just referenced, that engineers design that was wrong. Right now is your opportunity in your organization to create a culture of continuous improvement and be ready to welcome the rapid feedback and the ability to adapt to it, because that's actually the strength of a business, right? We almost have been wanting this. In many cases, I know engineers, I know trades, I know architects that want to get better. They want to know what works and what doesn't work. And like you just said, it takes 30 years in some cases for us to, and we're talking about a system that doesn't communicate with the tools that we're using to design and build and construct, etc. So now we're looping this together. So if you can create a culture where continuous improvement is welcomed and you can get that feedback back and then bring it to improve every time, there's no right. It's never going to be done. It's always going to get improved. So you guys are really setting up, but you're setting up a cultural shift that I think is going to be really interesting, again, to watch inside of VIATechnik, because you're actually going to do this to yourselves, which is cool.
Yep, 100%. It's okay. There is so many external factors happening in a building that your design is not going to operate or perform the way that you designed it. It's just not. There's too many external factors. There's human factors. Person's going to be opening the window every day because they'd rather have fresh air. That kills your whole performance. Those things you can't control. So you gotta then just learn from what you were doing, get those feedback, understand it better, and do it differently versus just trying to hide from what might be a claim in the future, right?
You went there. I mean, I agree with everything you said, Jeff, but before you went on that rant, I already wrote down what's the incentive to be honest in the first place. Like, again, project contracts, there's one thing to say as an organization, we want to feed information up. Yes. But so many of these challenges, especially in FM that we're talking about, are cross stakeholder, where it could be partially an engineer's mistake. It could be partially an installer's mistake. It could be partially a GC sequence thing. And nobody really at that point, it gets this hot potato and pointing fingers and all this sensitivities, because there's real dollars and cents involved at that point. So if AI is really going to help us that quickly, we've got to figure out a way to both be honest with AI, but yet avoid this dilemma of I need to put my guard up because of the contract and financial incentives, which you can't argue against, right?
You're going to have to end up being a partner with that owner and make sure that you're there to support them when they need the next help or figure it out. They're not going to have the time to chase you down and figure out what you did. I mean, unless the air handler fell through the roof, but they're not going to chase it down based off of building performance.
And then the only tricky part is the owners that are public companies where their hands are tied by literally laws that force these types of contracts. And it's like that. It's like, man, I don't know how to help you there. Other than some other lobbyist that can, make a larger stink than us about this. Because I had to get to some point of, that we are stuck in the mud here on some of this, but without tools to help us sort through all that. And I think that's what makes Voyager unique, right? It's like you understand where all those rocks on the road are along the way, and how do you navigate those and create good data for a facility manager.
Well, but I'll challenge back there, Nathan. Like, I think the cliff that all those people aren't looking at is the cliff of people not having enough in the trades, in the industry, to deliver what we have. And I think that's going to drive a shift, even in public companies, of finding a way to work in more of a partnership model in order to source and get things done, because we are headed for a disaster if we do not. And 9 times out of 10, we hit the disaster-ish, and there's people who've pushed beyond it and done things that are maybe a little outside the lines, but they're getting results. And they go, well, how'd you do that? And they go, well, we went outside the lines a little, but this worked. And then they go, let's redraw. And they take out the eraser and they redraw the line. And it does not happen where we redraw the line first. It does take people with partnerships and a risk tolerance to do it. And I think that's what Voyager is offering, is an idea of a way to minimize the risks, right? If we just jump off the cliff and we don't check our pack to make sure our base jumping gear is correct, then we are stupid. But if we sit down, we understand what's in there, we make sure it's packed correctly, and we do a little calculation and then we jump, we're still a nut. You're base jumping.
Yeah.
You're still a nutball, but you're a calculated
risk mitigated
nutball. So that's what we're saying here. But I also see, like, we're going into this really far area. Like, there's a ton of value in this today in the way that facilities operate. And we don't have to have that foundational unstructured shift. So you're also built something that I think follows the rules of evolution and adoption as well.
It's a next step on the path. I think there's a connection point coming from design and construction into operations. And that connection point is hell still. The project closeout is probably still one of the worst experiences for everybody on every project. And what is not realized is the value that is lost in that. For facility managers, they go and hand enter all that information back into their new systems. And it's like, okay, but it was actually populated in design construction. Just nobody really looked at it correctly. Nobody validated it, and they walked away. So can we fix this then so you're not having to redo it all over? It's a matter of, do they want to? There's also budgets. Hey, where does your budget come from? There's a design and construction budget, and then there's a facility operations budget. Who's paying for what? And it's really the owners that you're starting to see that is almost combining those or making those two departments work together that are open to this idea. So they're racing the line there and saying, all right, capital projects, you have to work with them. You have to get this done. And facility managers or facility operations, if you want somebody in design construction to check this data and make sure it's done right, you pay for it. You pay for a consultant that sits over top and does it. But the amount of money and the risk that they're mitigating to do that actually saves them time. They can operate their building better. And they also can ensure they get data handover at project closeout. There's hospitals waiting 16 months to get project closeout after opening. they're having to operate.
I'd love to dig more questions, but we got to wrap her up. But there is another little announcement in here. You may have taken a role here too in this process and kind of put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And you got a new role, not outside of VIATechnik. This is on top of what you do. No. This is on top of what you do. So what announce, give the folks a little look-see.
Yeah, absolutely. So National Institute of Building Sciences, and I have been appointed the chair of Digital Twin Integration Committee. And we are a committee underneath the Digital Technology Council. And we are looking at how we advance digital twins. We've put a couple papers out, and we're looking at the next steps and really what can we solve? What can we do? But we're also, we're trying to grow the membership too. So if anybody is listening that wants more information on it, or at least just to be part of the conversation, reach out to me. It's going to grow more towards the actual field and what we're doing in the field, what we're doing day to day, and how we can solve this instead of just defining what interoperability means.
I love it. It's leaning into the organization. If you guys don't know NIBS, look back. We've had episodes on it. It is like I said, when the line needs to get redrawn, somebody's got to be there to redraw it. And it is going to be most likely in the camp of NIBS that will start to help. It'll be organizations like that coming together that help. So appreciate you diving into that. And if anybody wants to find out more about it, you can hit any of us on social. We'll connect you with Jacob, or just find him on LinkedIn, message him, and he'd be happy to tell you a little bit more. Man, this was fun. I miss sitting down with you. It's been too long. You've been stuck in the Voyager tunnel. So glad to see you brought your head up to come and talk to us about it, Jacob. Thanks, my man.
I really appreciate it, Jeff. Nathan, great conversation. I'm sure we'll actually keep continuing the conversation here soon.
Oh man, I was impressed. Yeah, very very solid answers. You passed the test. I'm sold.
I appreciate
We're
it.
sold. You are now officially out of the hot seat as I take us out of the show. Thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Jacob Delbora. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.